Thank you for your time. Each subscription is a sign of support that I truly appreciate.
Philadelphia, late spring, 1776. 13 colonies teetered on rebellion's edge. But who could justify this treason to a watching world? Who possessed words powerful enough to transform subjects into citizens, grievance into revolution? One young Virginian would answer with pen and principle alone. June 7th. Richard Henry Lee rose before Congress, demanding independence. Delegates deferred the vote, but appointed 5 men to draft justification. Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Roger Sherman, Robert Livingston, and Thomas Jefferson, age 33, largely unknown. Jefferson received the pen. He had no idea what it would cost him. Why Jefferson? He'd written little of consequence, yet something in his prose transformed philosophy into fire. Abstract principles became urgent truths under his hand. Natural rights, self-governance, human liberty, he made them feel inevitable, righteous, inescapable. The Committee of 5 handed him history's most dangerous assignment. Alone in his rented Philadelphia rooms, Jefferson began. June 11th. Quill scratched parchment through sweltering heat. No books consulted, no outlines prepared. Locke's philosophy, Virginia's recent Declaration of Rights, ancient wisdom about tyranny, all lived inside his mind. For 17 days he labored, alone, shaping revolution into sentences. We hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable. Jefferson's pen moved with conviction that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Not original philosophy, but his phrasing gave old ideas new power. Words became weapons. 27 grievances against King George. 168 words condemning slavery as cruel war against human nature itself. Lists of oppression, legal arguments, moral outrage. Jefferson's draft accumulated devastating firepower. By June 28th, he possessed a complete indictment. Thousands of words demanding one. Verdict: separation. Jefferson knew his masterpiece would face scrutiny. Committee members would read critically. Congress would judge harshly. Changes were inevitable. Yet nothing prepared him for what approached. In 3 days, Congress would remove 1/4 of his text. His finest moral statement would be erased. His conscience edited out. Franklin read Jefferson's draft first. Age 70, suffering gout. The old philosopher spotted something immediately. Sacred and undeniable. Too theological, too emotional. Franklin's pen struck through both words. Above them he wrote, self-evident. 2 words changed. Philosophy itself shifted underneath. Jefferson noticed. He said nothing. He yielded. Franklin's edit was no accident. Sacred invited religious argument. Undeniable appealed to conscience. But self-evident employed pure reason, Enlightenment's sharpest blade. No debate possible, no argument needed. Truth simply exists, obvious to rational minds. Philosophy bowed. 2. Pragmatism. Theology surrendered to reason. Each deletion felt like betrayal. Franklin crossed out my words. Sacred expressed what I believed. These truths came from nature's God, not human invention. His edit seemed to hollow them out. Yet his wisdom was undeniable. Congress needed reason, not revelation. Every syllable I'd chosen deliberately now faced judgment. Reluctantly, I accepted his change. Adams worked differently. While Franklin struck boldly, Adams suggested gently. He questioned a phrase here, refined logic there. Less confrontational, more collaborative. And Jefferson watched him work, recognizing a fellow lawyer's precision. Adams understood committees. He'd been navigating Congress for years. His edits prepared Jefferson's prose for the coming storm. June 28th. The Committee of 5 gathered for final review. Franklin and Adams had already marked 47 changes. Sherman and Livingston added little. Jefferson watched his draft transform into something else, still his ideas, no longer entirely his words. The committee approved. Now came Congress. Now came the real battle. Friday afternoon. The revised draft reached Congress. Delegates received copies. Jefferson felt his stomach tighten as hands unfolded the pages. Some read eagerly, others skeptically. That weekend, the Declaration sat untouched while Jefferson couldn't sleep. He understood what approached. They would dissect it, debate it, demolish parts of it. His masterpiece would become their compromise. July 1st. British warships approached New York Harbor, carrying thousands of reinforcements. The military threat concentrated minds wonderfully. Congress debated Lee's resolution through the day. Wavering delegates finally committed. July 2nd arrived. The vote, yes. The colonies were independent. Now they needed to explain why. Now the Declaration faced its true test. Congress transformed into Committee of the Whole to debate the Declaration. Real scrutiny began. Delegates questioned every phrase, challenged every assertion. Jefferson sat among them, silent, recording their objections. Each criticism landed like a physical blow. These passages he'd labored over, essential he believed, struck them as unnecessary, dangerous, foolish. Tensions crackled through the chamber. Southern delegates feared any criticism of slavery. Northern merchants who financed slave ships felt vulnerable. Middle colonies worried about alienating potential British allies. Every word mattered strategically. Every phrase could shatter unity. My prose became their battlefield. Poetry surrendered to politics. July 3rd, Congress began systematic deletions. Entire passages struck out. Furious and helpless, Jefferson watched them dismantle his work. Why this grievance removed? Why that phrase softened? They offered reasons: political necessity, diplomatic caution, Southern sensibilities. He heard only cowardice. His anger transformed into something colder: contempt. The longest passage condemned slavery, 168 words. He has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the persons of a distant people who never offended him. Powerful, uncompromising, damning King George for imposing this evil on unwilling colonists. Congress hated it immediately. Here's the contradiction laid bare. Jefferson enslaved over 600 human beings during his lifetime. Yet, he wrote those words condemning slavery as warfare against humanity. Did he believe them? Yes. Did he live them? No. The draft declaration gave voice to a conscience he daily violated. Hypocrisy? Perhaps. Or perhaps the first American contradiction, speaking truths we refuse to embody. The slavery passage blamed King George for the slave trade. Clever strategy: enlist slavery as evidence of tyranny, not primarily as moral evil. The king prevented colonies from ending this execrable commerce, Jefferson argued. But the argument contained danger. If colonists wanted to abolish slavery and the crown prevented it, then independence meant abolition. Congress recognized the trap instantly. South Carolina's delegates erupted. Georgia's representatives joined them. This passage must be removed entirely, no compromise acceptable. They threatened openly. Keep this language, lose Southern support. No declaration, no unity, no independence. Their ultimatum hung in Philadelphia's stifling heat like a death sentence on Jefferson's finest moral statement. Congress faced an impossible choice: condemn slavery and fracture the coalition, or preserve unity by removing the condemnation. 13 colonies, each suspicious of the others, must speak with one voice. Break apart now, before independence was even declared? Unthinkable. The slavery passage would be sacrificed. Principle surrendered to expedience. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us. That vague phrase replaced 168 words. Coded language referring to Lord Dunmore's proclamation, freeing slaves who joined British forces. This satisfied Southern delegates. It condemned British action without condemning slavery itself. Jefferson's moral clarity evaporated into diplomatic fog. Congress had edited out his conscience. Northern delegates also demanded the slavery passage be struck. Jefferson later understood why. Northern merchants carried human cargo to West Indies markets. Northern ships built the slave trade. Northern capital financed slavery's expansion. The passage threatened their profits as surely as Southern plantations. Everyone's hands were bloody. No one wanted them examined. Congress methodically destroyed the passage. Each sentence crossed out. Each word eliminated. Sitting there, documenting every deletion, Jefferson noted in margins what they removed. The physical act of striking through carefully chosen phrases accompanied an emotional erasure. His vision of America's moral. Leadership deleted. His voice silenced. His ideals subordinated to political calculation. That evening, Franklin found Jefferson sulking. He'd lived 70 years, suffered countless disappointments, understood compromise as necessity. He told a story. A hat maker wanted a sign. John Thompson Hatter makes and sells hats for ready money with a picture of a hat. Friends offered suggestions. Each struck out redundancies. Finally, only John Thompson remained with the picture. "I made it a rule," Franklin said, "never to become draftsman of papers reviewed by public bodies. You'll certainly have your work mangled." His eyes held sympathy, but also firmness. This is democracy's price, he meant. Individual genius must bow to collective judgment. Accept what survives, mourn what's lost, but accept it. Franklin's wisdom cut deep. Democracy requires compromise. Jefferson understood that intellectually. But emotionally, his finest moral statement had been erased. His explicit condemnation of slavery, gone. America would proclaim all men are created equal while practicing slavery. We just embedded a fatal contradiction into our founding. He accepted necessity, he never forgave it. The deleted slavery passage cast shadows across 84 years. That contradiction, universal equality proclaimed, racial slavery practiced, would poison everything. Territorial expansion, states' rights debates, constitutional crises, all flowed from what Congress struck out on July 3, 1776. One deleted passage, 600,000 dead in Civil War, 87 years later. Congress removed more than slavery language. Jefferson's passages about England, shared blood, common history, the sorrow of separation from kinfolk, struck them as weakness. Revolution requires clean breaks, they believed. Emotional attachments to enemies were luxuries they couldn't afford. Poetry must surrender to propaganda. Nuance must yield to clarity. Congress calculated coldly about England. If revolution failed militarily, burned bridges meant no reconciliation possible. Keeping diplomatic options open, however subtly, was strategic wisdom. Jefferson called this pusillanimous, cowardly. He wanted boldness. They demanded prudence. He lost that argument too. July 3rd became July 4th. Deletions continued relentlessly. Congress occasionally added colder, more legalistic language, replacing Jefferson's eloquent phrasing. He'd written poetry. They edited it into legal brief. Two different documents were fighting for existence. His, passionate, moral, visionary; theirs, cautious, diplomatic, strategic; theirs won. Jefferson's handwriting grew more agitated as he documented their changes. Each deletion represented a choice about America's identity. Would we provide moral leadership about slavery? No. Would we express emotional complexity about separating from England? Strategically unwise. Would we speak bold truths? Only when convenient. Congress was defining America. Jefferson was merely recording the definition. The 27 grievances underwent systematic alteration. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly, became shorter. He has made judges dependent on his will alone, was sharpened. Congress shaped them toward one narrative. King George's personal tyranny forced colonists' hands. Less blame on Parliament, none on British people. Everything calibrated to assign guilt to one man. One tiny change embodied the revolution. Subjects became citizens. Jefferson noticed immediately. Subjects implied subordination to crown. Citizens suggested free agents and self-governance. That single word choice captured what they were becoming. When Congress's edits worked, they achieved philosophical precision through linguistic surgery. Sometimes their changes improved his draft. He hated admitting that. July 4th morning, Congress still debated. The document must be approved today. Independence was voted but remained unjustified to the world. Delegates were exhausted, temperaments frayed, compromise accelerated. To finish, everyone surrendered something more. Southern delegates got slavery language removed. Northern delegates got diplomatic caution preserved. Jefferson got his preamble mostly intact. By mid-afternoon, exhaustion achieved what argument couldn't. Congress had spent 3 days dissecting the Declaration. Military threats mounted. The document, though imperfect, represented achievable consensus. Jefferson participated in approving the final language. What choice did he have? It emerged as Congress's declaration now, not his. Still his words, no longer his vision. 4 o'clock, July 4th. Congress voted. The Declaration of Independence was adopted. Some delegates felt jubilation, others solemn determination. Jefferson felt contradictory emotions warring inside: pride in what survived, rage at what was lost, anxiety about whether these compromised words could actually inspire revolution. History would judge. He couldn't. Jefferson didn't sign that day. Nobody did except John Hancock and Charles Thompson, the secretary. Printing began immediately. Dunlap's press worked overnight. The formal signing came later. July 19th, Congress ordered the Declaration engrossed on parchment. August 2nd, delegates lined up to sign. Even that moment carried complexity, danger, fear. July 5th. Printed copies spread outward. Paul Revere rode north. Newspapers published the Declaration. Church bells rang. Militia officers read it to assembled troops. The document Jefferson had labored over, edited, revised, compromised, entered public consciousness. Americans read these words not knowing how much had been cut away. Perhaps that was mercy. Jefferson made copies of his original draft immediately, sent them to Richard Henry Lee, George Wythe, trusted friends. He wanted his original vision preserved, his unedited words documented. The act was both noble and bitter, creating evidence of Congress's depredations, as he called them. Historical protest disguised as preservation. Future generations would know. This is what America rejected. August 2nd. The engrossed parchment appeared, beautiful calligraphy by Timothy Matlock. 56 delegates lined up to sign. Many hesitated. Signing meant death if captured. Treason's penalty was execution. Yet one by one, they committed themselves. Jefferson's name appears fourth, below John Adams, forever linked to words Congress had edited. History would remember the final version, not his original. What survived retained power. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Franklin's change proved stronger than Jefferson's sacred and undeniable. The preamble's philosophy remained intact. The grievances, though edited, stayed comprehensive. What emerged wasn't pure vision. It was consensus, compromised, diplomatic, strategic, yet somehow, mysteriously, still revolutionary. Democracy had worked. Jefferson would never fully forgive democracy. By removing slavery language, Congress made an unconscious choice with enormous consequences. America would proclaim universal rights while practicing racial slavery. That contradiction demanded resolution eventually. The Declaration's assertion that all men are created equal contained seeds of slavery's destruction. But by removing Jefferson's explicit condemnation, Congress delayed that reckoning 84 years. That silence about slavery defined American history. Northern expansion, Southern secession, Western territories, constitutional crises, all flowed from what Congress cut from the Declaration. They created a historical debt by striking those words. The debt came due in 1861. Fort Sumter fell. Civil War began. 600,000 died, paying for Congress's editorial decision. Decades later, Jefferson wrote detailed notes explaining what Congress had removed and why. His anger had aged into cold historical analysis. He documented their choices precisely, ensuring future generations would know. This is what America rejected at its founding. This moral clarity we sacrificed for unity. This conscience we edited out. His bitterness never faded. Jefferson, a slaveholder, wrote humanity's most eloquent condemnation of slavery. Congress, representing a nation partially built on slavery, deleted it. He spent his lifetime enslaving over 600 people while his drafted words opposed slavery. Contradiction defined him. America's founding contradiction was his personal contradiction, made manifest in that July document. Had Congress retained the slavery passage, America would have committed itself to abolition. Not immediately. Implementation would have remained contested for decades. But the principle would have been clear from the beginning. That absence shaped everything after. Slaveholders felt emboldened. Abolitionists felt betrayed. The nation's moral foundation was deliberately, consciously weakened for political unity. Congress demonstrated something fundamental about democracy. Committees compromise by nature. Individual vision must yield to collective judgment. The purer and original ideal, the more editing will soften it. Jefferson learned this at 33, Lincoln during Civil War, Roosevelt during Depression. Later leaders learned the same lesson. Democratic process means ideals get diluted. Congress faced genuine constraints Jefferson hadn't fully grasped initially. 13 colonies, each suspicious. Southern colonies economically dependent on slavery. Northern merchants profiting from slave trade. Middle colonies cautious about revolution. A declaration condemning slavery would have fractured this fragile coalition immediately. For unity's sake, moral clarity was sacrificed. That calculation haunted America for 84 years. Yet Congress preserved what mattered most. The preamble survived intact. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those words outlived the compromises. Those words changed the world. Abraham Lincoln, reading the Declaration decades later, seized on that preamble. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth the Declaration's date, not the Constitution's. Lincoln recovered the moral claim Congress had weakened by removing Jefferson's slavery language. He understood. The Declaration's philosophy, though compromised at birth, still demanded slavery end. The Declaration lived two lives. First, as Congress's compromise, diplomatic, strategic, designed to unite 13 colonies in 1776. Second, as revolutionary philosophy, a statement of human rights so powerful it transcended its compromised origins. Over time, the second life mattered more. Americans forgot the edits. They remembered the ideals. Perhaps that's the final irony. Congress couldn't foresee that removing slavery language would, paradoxically, preserve the Declaration's revolutionary power. By leaving all men are created equal while cutting specific slavery condemnation, they created productive ambiguity. That ambiguity let future Americans, Douglas, Tubman, Anthony, King, to claim the Declaration for purposes Congress never imagined. Abolition, suffrage, civil rights, equality itself. Jefferson's unspoken words, that slavery passage struck out, echoed through centuries anyway. Frederick Douglass quoted the Declaration, demanding America honor its promises. Harriet Tubman claimed those promises, risking everything. Martin Luther King, in 1963, invoked those same promises. I have a dream. Congress's edits couldn't kill the ideals they'd tried to suppress. Jefferson died July 4th, 1826, exactly 50 years after the Declaration's adoption. He'd written it. Congress had edited it. He'd resented those edits for 50 years. Yet, in death, he was forever linked to the Declaration's ideals, not its compromises. History remembers him as author of All Men Are Created Equal, not as the man Congress silenced about slavery. Perhaps that's justice. Perhaps it's irony. Perhaps both. 1/4 of Jefferson's original draft was deleted. Most significantly, the slavery passage, 168 words condemning the slave trade as cruel war against human nature. That passage never appeared in any official American document. It existed only in his private papers, his preserved drafts, his documented rage. America lost its moral clarity at the founding moment by choice. Congress preserved the Declaration's philosophical core, unalienable rights, government by consent, the right to alter or abolish oppressive government. These survived editing. They proved sufficient to inspire revolution and, eventually, to demand slavery end. What survived was enough, barely, but enough. Sometimes in history, barely enough is everything. The Declaration of Independence remains history's most eloquent statement of human rights. Yet, it was born from compromise. Jefferson wrote it. Congress edited it. Neither original nor final version perfectly expressed any individual's complete vision. That paradox, revolutionary ideals emerging from democratic compromise, purity lost to consensus, defines not only the Declaration, but American democracy itself. We remain forever caught between vision and reality, between what we wrote and what we meant, between Jefferson's ideals and Congress's necessary compromises.